Listen, Molly, I'm very happy, I'm very proud of this discovery.
Dr. Mustafa Waziri led the Egyptian team that discovered the coffins.
In southern Egypt, a forbidden chamber has finally been opened, revealing secrets long buried beneath the sand. The expected mummy and grave goods are missing, leaving experts shocked and puzzled. Who could have altered this tomb? And what does it mean for history? Join us as we uncover what archaeologists found in the forbidden Egyptian chamber. Why Egypt still holds secrets. Egypt is a land filled with mysteries, where the past seems to hide beneath every grain of sand. For thousands of years, ancient Egyptians built tombs and chambers with careful planning, precision, and purpose. The pyramids, temples, and smaller burial sites were not random constructions. Each structure reflected the religious beliefs, social hierarchies, and technological skills of its time. Tombs were created as eternal homes for pharaohs, nobles, and other important individuals. They were designed to protect bodies, treasures, and sacred texts from decay, theft, or the effects of time. The construction of these tombs was an intricate process. Workers carved chambers out of solid rock or built them with limestone and granite blocks. Walls were smooth and coated, ceilings were reinforced, and entrances were carefully sealed. Often, corridors were deliberately made confusing, with false passages or heavy stone doors to prevent intruders. The idea was simple. The afterlife was central to Egyptian culture, and the body needed protection to ensure a soul's journey beyond death. Tombs were not just resting places, they were sacred spaces, combining architecture, art, and spiritual meaning. The Nile Valley played a key role in this system. Its fertile land allowed Egyptian civilization to flourish, creating the wealth and manpower needed for these massive constructions. Pharaohs controlled both the labor force and the materials, and priests oversaw the religious rituals tied to death and burial. Egyptians believed in life after death, in the judgment of the soul, and in the importance of preserving the body. Tombs were hidden away because protection was sacred. The more difficult the tomb was to access, the safer the treasures and the rituals inside would remain. Some tombs were buried under desert sands or behind elaborate walls to ensure they lasted for eternity. Locating these hidden structures is not easy, even with modern technology. Archaeologists must carefully study topography, old maps, and historical records before even beginning a dig. Ground-penetrating radar is often used to detect anomalies beneath the surface. This technology sends waves into the ground and measures reflections, revealing differences in density, voids, or unusual shapes that might indicate a chamber or corridor. In addition, aerial surveys, satellite images, and magnetometers help researchers identify sites that could contain buried structures. Every discovery begins with patient planning, careful measurements, and the slow, meticulous removal of soil and stone. Excavations can take years, sometimes decades, before revealing the secrets hidden beneath the surface. The thrill of discovering a tomb or chamber comes not just from its age, but from what it can reveal about Egyptian society. Items left behind, pottery, tools, jewelry, and writings offer clues about daily life, trade, beliefs, and political structures. Sealed chambers are especially important because they can preserve materials that have never been exposed to the air, sunlight, or looters. These untouched spaces act as time capsules, showing a world exactly as it was thousands of years ago. Yet, even after centuries of study, many areas remain unexplored. Egypt's deserts are vast, and ancient builders sometimes placed tombs in locations far from any settlement. Over millennia, shifting sands, floods, and human activity have covered these sites. Modern researchers know that many discoveries are still waiting, hidden under layers of sediment or rock. The idea of a sealed chamber is not just a romantic notion, it is a real possibility. Each unexplored site has the potential to teach new lessons about ancient engineering, religious practices, and cultural priorities. Understanding this context is crucial for appreciating why Egypt continues to fascinate historians and archaeologists. So, what if one of these hidden chambers was not simply a burial site? What if it contained clues about political struggles, forgotten rulers, or decisions that shaped Egypt in ways history has never recorded? The discovery, how the Forbidden Chamber was found. The discovery took place in Abydos, one of the most important necropolises in southern Egypt. Abydos has been a central burial ground for millennia, known for housing the tombs of pharaohs, high officials, and sacred sites connected to Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Its arid climate and shifting sands have preserved many structures, but much of the area remained unexplored. Archaeologists had long suspected that hidden chambers might exist beneath the surface, and recent surveys confirmed that some spaces were still untouched by human hands for thousands of years. The team responsible for the discovery was international, bringing together experts from multiple countries. Dr. Joseph Wegner, a renowned Egyptologist, led the excavation along with specialists from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities. Their work combined years of experience in field archaeology, knowledge of ancient construction methods, and modern technology such as ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping. The team had a clear goal: to locate previously unknown chambers, determine their age, and study them without causing damage. The chamber was found nearly 23 feet underground, beneath layers of sand, soil, and debris accumulated over millennia. Early excavation presented immediate challenges. The soil was compacted and mixed with small rocks, making the removal process slow and careful. Archaeologists used brushes, trowels, and small pickaxes to dig without disturbing the integrity of the surrounding structure. Every bucket of dirt was sifted for artifacts, and every measurement was meticulously recorded. Safety was also a concern, as the chamber sat beneath a slope of loose soil. Temporary supports were installed to prevent collapse, ensuring the team could work steadily. The entrance to the chamber was remarkable in its simplicity and strength. A limestone doorway, roughly 7 feet high and 4 feet wide, had been sealed with precision. The seal itself showed no signs of tampering, suggesting that it had remained untouched for thousands of years. Behind this door, a short passageway led to the main burial chamber. The walls of the corridor were straight and smooth, cut from local limestone, and designed to support the weight of the earth above. Archaeologists noted that the construction methods reflected careful planning, including the use of interlocking blocks and precise alignment to prevent collapse. Inside, the chamber itself revealed impressive engineering. The central room was rectangular, with mud brick vaults supporting the ceiling. These vaults were crafted to distribute weight evenly, a method that prevented the chamber from caving in over centuries. The walls were coated with a fine layer of plaster, which had preserved faint decorative traces. The passageways and entry rooms were arranged in a logical sequence, allowing access while maintaining the sacred privacy of the burial space. Every structural choice reflected the builder's understanding of weight, support, and the long-term durability of the tomb. Excavating the chamber required extreme patience. Every stone and piece of debris removed was documented, photographed, and cataloged. The team used brushes to remove fine dust from corners and grooves, ensuring that even the smallest details, such as tool marks and plaster remnants, were preserved for study. Ground-penetrating radar scans were cross-referenced to ensure no other hidden voids were missed. This meticulous work allowed the team to map the entire chamber before moving any large stones, giving them a complete understanding of the layout and potential challenges. Yet, despite centuries of planning and precision, the chamber raised immediate questions. Why had this burial site remained hidden for so long? What had caused it to remain untouched when so many others were looted or decayed over time? And most importantly, what secrets lay within, waiting to be revealed after thousands of years? What they found inside. Once archaeologists carefully removed centuries of sand and debris, they entered the sealed chamber beneath Abydos. The layout immediately revealed a surprising combination of traditional Egyptian design and unusual elements that set it apart from other known tombs. The chamber included entry rooms, a central burial room, and multiple mud brick vaults, all arranged in a deliberate pattern. The passageways leading to the main chamber were narrow but structurally sound, reflecting careful planning and advanced understanding of weight distribution. Inside the chamber, the archaeologists found faded hieroglyphic bands adorning the walls. These symbols represented goddesses of protection and mourning, specifically Isis and Nephthys, who were traditionally invoked to guide and protect the deceased in the afterlife. The artwork was fragile and partially damaged, likely due to centuries of environmental exposure and possible human interference before the chamber was fully sealed. Nevertheless, the preservation of these symbols suggested the builders had invested considerable care in maintaining religious and cultural practices, even during a period of political instability. One of the most puzzling aspects of the chamber was the absence of a mummy or any identifiable human remains. Unlike most Egyptian tombs, where the body of the pharaoh or high-ranking official was central to the burial, this chamber contained no skeleton, no mummified tissues, and no traces of embalming materials. Archaeologists conducted careful soil analysis and examined dust and residue within the burial rooms, but they found nothing that could indicate the prior presence of a body. This absence was unusual, raising immediate questions about the purpose of the chamber and whether it had been disturbed long ago. Equally notable was the lack of expected grave goods. Traditional tombs from this period often included pottery, jewelry, amulets, figurines, and daily life objects intended to accompany the deceased in the afterlife. The chamber at Abydos contained none of these items. Shelves and recessed niches that were clearly intended for offerings remained empty. Archaeologists concluded that either the objects had been removed in antiquity or they had never been placed there at all, suggesting a possible shift in burial practices or a unique purpose for this chamber that differed from standard tombs. Despite the missing human and material elements, the chamber's construction revealed advanced engineering and architectural skill. The limestone entry was precisely cut and sealed, with interlocking blocks that had preserved their integrity for thousands of years. Mud brick vaults were carefully constructed to support the weight of the ceiling, demonstrating knowledge of load management and structural stability. The alignment of the passageways and central room reflected intentional design, likely based on religious or symbolic principles rather than mere convenience. The chamber also provided subtle clues about its history of alteration. The hieroglyphs showed signs of partial erasure, and some walls had been patched with different materials, suggesting repairs or modifications after the initial construction. By studying the debris layers on the floor, archaeologists observed that sand and dust had accumulated in a manner consistent with long-term natural settling, but certain areas displayed irregular deposits, indicating targeted human activity. These observations hinted that the chamber may have been revisited long after it was sealed, possibly for political or ritual reasons. The combination of missing human remains, absent grave goods, and evidence of later alterations led researchers to a complex conclusion. The chamber was not a typical tomb. It preserved traces of traditional Egyptian beliefs and craftsmanship, yet it diverged in ways that pointed to an unusual purpose or a period of historical disruption. While the original builders clearly intended it as a burial site, subsequent events, whether looting, political upheaval, or religious shifts, had transformed its final state. Yet as experts cataloged the chamber's contents, a troubling mystery began to emerge, one that suggests the chamber was altered long after it was sealed. If the king's body was not here, and his treasures were gone, what really happened inside these walls? And why would someone deliberately erase the traces of a pharaoh, the strange absence of the pharaoh? When archaeologists finally stepped into the chamber, one of the first and most shocking observations was the absence of a mummy or any identifiable burial remains. In most Egyptian tombs, even those thousands of years old, archaeologists expect to find some trace of the body, whether partially preserved in the dry climate or disrupted over time. In this chamber, however, there was nothing that could be confirmed as human remains. No skeletal fragments, no mummification materials, and no wrapping textiles were present. This immediately suggested that the chamber had either been disturbed long ago or never contained the body it was built for. Adding to the mystery, the hieroglyphic inscriptions that should have identified the tomb's owner were heavily damaged. Most Egyptian tombs display the name of the pharaoh, usually repeated several times on walls, doorways, and coffin surfaces. In this chamber, the glyphs were fragmented, worn, or partially erased, making it impossible to confirm the identity of the ruler. Some symbols could be tentatively interpreted, but the pattern was incomplete. The damage to these inscriptions suggested intentional erasure, which was not uncommon in Egypt when later rulers wanted to remove the memory of a predecessor or rival. To understand why this tomb was so empty, archaeologists compared it with other Egyptian tombs, where the contents had been removed in antiquity. In many cases, looters targeted valuable items such as jewelry, amulets, or precious metals. Even when looters could not access the mummy, they often disturbed the interior, leaving clear signs like displaced stones, tool marks on sarcophagi, or uneven floors. Some tombs show evidence of multiple visits over centuries, with later generations removing or rearranging objects. In this Abydos chamber, however, there were almost no valuables left, and the absence of a mummy suggested a level of disruption or abandonment beyond normal looting patterns. Archaeologists also studied wear patterns and debris layers in the chamber to determine if it had been disturbed in ancient times. For example, the floor of the main room was layered with sand and dust accumulated evenly over centuries, suggesting long-term exposure. In some tombs, archaeologists find uneven layers of debris or footprints from intruders, which help identify disturbances. In this case, the debris patterns were unusual. While some dust and sand had settled naturally, certain corners showed signs of scraping or clearing, as if objects had been deliberately removed. This suggested that the chamber may have been emptied systematically rather than by random looters. Another clue came from the walls and vaults. In undisturbed tombs, protective seals often remain intact. In this chamber, the doorway seal was strong, but the internal sections suggested human interaction. Small fragments of plaster and limestone at strategic points indicated that sections of the walls or shelving had been intentionally opened and then restored or left partially exposed. Archaeologists use these subtle markers to infer that someone had accessed the chamber in antiquity, but the motivation remained unclear. The combination of missing burial remains, erased hieroglyphs, and signs of controlled disturbance raised critical questions. Why was the chamber so carefully constructed, yet left almost empty? Was the pharaoh removed after death, or was the tomb prepared but never used? Scholars noted that political upheaval, dynastic disputes, or changes in burial customs could explain some cases, but the level of preparation and engineering in this chamber suggested it was intended for someone of high importance. This absence also affected the dating and historical context of the tomb. Without a body or clear inscriptions, archaeologists had to rely on architectural style, construction methods, and decorative motifs to estimate the period of the chamber. All indicators suggested a date during the Second Intermediate Period, a time when Egypt was politically fragmented, but the lack of direct evidence made the identification tentative. So, if the king wasn't here and his name was erased, then what happened to him, and why would ancient Egyptians themselves abandon this chamber? A historical puzzle. The discovery of the sealed chamber at Abydos raised more than questions about a single tomb. It also opened a window into a period of Egyptian history that is poorly understood, the Second Intermediate Period, roughly between 1700 and 1500 BCE. This was a time when centralized power in Egypt weakened, and multiple local rulers controlled different regions. Historians have struggled for centuries to fully document this period, partly because records are scarce, partly because many rulers left no monuments or inscriptions. One theory is that the Abydos chamber belonged to a lost dynasty in Upper Egypt, sometimes called the Abydos dynasty. This dynasty may have ruled during the gap between the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom, but the evidence is limited. Only a few king lists mention it, and many inscriptions from that period are damaged or missing. The chamber itself may provide crucial information about rulers who were previously invisible in written records. The architectural style and burial practices inside the chamber differ in subtle ways from known Middle Kingdom and early New Kingdom tombs. While the use of limestone walls, mud brick vaults, and painted hieroglyphs is consistent with Egyptian traditions, the design elements show deviations that suggest experimentation or local adaptation. The decorative bands, especially those featuring Isis and Nephthys, hint at traditional funerary rituals, yet the absence of other expected symbols or personal names is unusual. These differences indicate that the chamber may have been constructed under a ruler whose reign was brief or whose dynasty was intentionally erased from later records. The absence of the king's name makes this historical puzzle even more complex. In most Egyptian tombs, pharaohs ensured their names were inscribed to guarantee recognition in the afterlife. The damage to the hieroglyphs at Abydos prevents a clear identification. Scholars have compared the remaining fragments with known hieroglyphic styles, but no definitive match has emerged. The missing information suggests that either the chamber was altered after sealing, possibly by rival dynasties, or the inscriptions deteriorated over time due to natural causes. Comparisons with other tombs from the Second Intermediate Period provide context. Many burial sites were looted in antiquity, either during times of political unrest or by later rulers seeking to reclaim wealth. Looting and natural degradation make it difficult to reconstruct the full sequence of rulers from this era. Archaeologists examine wear patterns, debris layers, and soil composition to determine whether a tomb was disturbed. In the case of Abydos, these studies indicate that the chamber may have been altered long after its initial sealing, but there is no clear evidence of large-scale looting. The minimal remains suggest a targeted removal of key items rather than random destruction. The possibility of a lost dynasty raises broader questions about the historical record of Egypt. If rulers existed who left no official inscriptions, no monuments, and no surviving mummies, then our understanding of Egyptian chronology is incomplete. Each tomb, inscription, and artifact from this period becomes a critical piece in reconstructing the political landscape. But if this chamber belongs to a forgotten pharaoh, then the next question is even bigger. Where are the other burial sites, and why have they remained hidden for so long? The answer may lie in the methods archaeologists use to uncover these secrets: technology that allows them to see beneath the sands without disturbing history. Modern tools meet ancient secrets. Modern archaeology has changed dramatically over the last few decades. and nowhere is this more visible than in Egypt. Ancient tombs and chambers are no longer located by luck, guessing, or digging blindly. Instead, archaeologists use advanced scientific tools that allow them to see hidden structures beneath the sand without causing damage. These technologies provide information that was impossible to obtain in earlier centuries, turning excavation into a precise science. One of the most important tools used in Egypt today is ground-penetrating radar. This system sends electromagnetic waves into the ground and measures the signals that bounce back. Differences in the reflected waves reveal the presence of voids, cavities, or structures underground. For archaeologists, this means that a chamber buried tens of feet beneath the surface can be mapped before a single shovel touches the soil. Ground-penetrating radar also helps detect subtle variations in soil density, which can indicate buried walls, floors, or passageways. In the case of Abydos, radar surveys helped identify the outline of the sealed chamber almost 23 feet below the surface, giving a clear target for excavation. Another breakthrough technology is muon radiography, which uses cosmic rays to see through dense materials like stone. Muons are high-energy particles that constantly pass through the Earth. When they encounter solid structures, they are absorbed or deflected in ways that can be measured with detectors. By placing these detectors in and around known structures, scientists can create a three-dimensional image of hidden voids. This method was famously used to detect chambers inside pyramids and was adapted for Abydos to verify the presence of previously unknown spaces behind limestone walls. Muon radiography is especially valuable because it is completely non-invasive, meaning that fragile structures remain intact while scientists gather precise measurements. Three-dimensional mapping and photogrammetry have also become indispensable tools for archaeologists. Photogrammetry involves taking hundreds or thousands of overlapping photographs of a site and using software to construct a detailed three-dimensional model. This allows every wall, corner, and surface to be digitally preserved before excavation. At Abydos, the team used 3D mapping to record the chamber's entryway, its vaults, and even the small cracks and tool marks in the limestone. These models allow scientists to study space in detail without being physically present and make it possible to share accurate representations with experts around the world. Combined with laser scanning, these methods create an exact digital twin of the chamber, ensuring that even if the site suffers damage during excavation, researchers still have a permanent record. Together, these technologies allow archaeologists to locate and study hidden structures without destruction. In the past, discovering a sealed tomb meant risking damage to the walls, floors, or burial objects simply by digging. Today, the combination of radar, muon imaging, and 3D mapping lets scientists see beneath the surface with extreme accuracy. This precision also informs excavation planning. Knowing the exact size, depth, and shape of a chamber allows teams to reinforce ceilings, plan safe access, and move equipment carefully. This reduces the risk of accidents that could destroy fragile artifacts or disturb the historical context. The chamber's aftermath. After the sealed chamber at Abydos was uncovered, the excitement among archaeologists was immense. Yet, almost immediately, hesitation set in. Opening a chamber that had been untouched for thousands of years is not a simple act. Every layer of sand, every bit of debris, and every corner of stone carries information about the past. Disturbing it risks losing context that can never be restored. Experts had to weigh the importance of access against the irreversible consequences of exploration. One of the main reasons for caution is the fragile context of the chamber. Archaeological context refers to the exact position of objects, the layering of soil and debris, and the arrangement of walls and floors. These details are crucial for understanding how the chamber was used, who built it, and in what order elements were added. Even a small movement of a stone or artifact can alter centuries of information. This chamber, buried nearly 23 feet underground, had remained untouched since it was sealed. Removing debris or examining surfaces could shift fine sand, disturb ancient mud brick edges, or even damage weak structural supports. Another major concern is potential damage to artifacts once exposed. Items preserved in a sealed environment can be extremely delicate. Changes in air pressure, humidity, or light can accelerate decay. Organic material, like cloth or wood, may crumble within hours after exposure. Even limestone walls and mud brick vaults can show new cracking if suddenly subjected to changes in moisture or temperature. Archaeologists understand that opening a tomb is not only a physical task, but also a responsibility to protect fragile history. Experts also face the irreversible loss of untouched stratigraphy. Stratigraphy is the layering of soil and debris over time, and it tells the story of human activity, natural events, and changes in the environment. Once a chamber is excavated, these layers cannot be returned to their original state. Any future archaeologist trying to study the site would have to work with altered or missing evidence. This made some team members question whether immediate excavation was the best course of action. Despite the excitement of discovering a previously hidden chamber, the team also had to consider ethical debates in archaeology. Modern archaeological principles emphasize minimal destruction and careful documentation. Excavation must balance the desire for knowledge with the responsibility to preserve history for future generations. In many cases, opening a site can provide answers, but it can also create new problems. The Abydos chamber, with its unique construction and poorly documented dynasty connections, presented a particularly difficult ethical dilemma. Scholars debated whether the potential information outweighed the risks of permanent alteration. There are historical examples of sites where early excavation led to lasting damage. Tombs and chambers opened without modern tools, often lost context, had walls collapse, or caused organic materials to deteriorate rapidly. These lessons informed the team at Abydos. They relied on non-invasive methods first, including detailed mapping, ground-penetrating radar, and careful observation of debris layers. This allowed them to minimize contact and better understand the chamber before physically entering it. Even with careful planning, the decision to enter the chamber carried consequences. Dust, shifting debris, or accidental brushing of walls could erase centuries of information. Any misstep in lifting stones or moving sand could destroy fragile evidence. The team knew that they were not just exploring a tomb. They were entering a complex historical record that had survived for thousands of years. And as the team sifted through these consequences, they made a discovery that may rewrite a chapter of Egyptian history, but only if they can interpret it correctly. What they found next inside the chamber was so unusual, so unprecedented, that it challenged everything known about burial practices and dynasties in Egypt, placing the discovery in history. The discovery of the sealed chamber at Abydos provides a remarkable window into Egypt's past. While many tombs have been excavated and studied, this chamber offers concrete evidence of a period and a dynasty that was previously poorly documented. The architecture, construction methods, and burial practices show a level of planning and technical knowledge that fills some gaps in the historical record, helping archaeologists better understand Egypt's complex political and cultural timeline. One of the most important takeaways is the evidence for a poorly known dynasty. The Second Intermediate Period, which occurred between the Middle and New Kingdoms, is already recognized as a time of political fragmentation. Records from this era are incomplete, and many kings are missing from the surviving lists. The Abydos chamber, with its distinctive construction, unique layout, and decorative elements, provides proof that a group of rulers existed, whose names and reigns were not fully preserved. Even though the pharaoh's name is no longer readable, the chamber itself stands as a tangible marker of authority, showing that these rulers invested significant resources into monumental architecture and burial practices. The chamber also highlights gaps in the historical record. Most of our knowledge about Egyptian dynasties comes from surviving texts, king lists, and monuments. However, looting, natural destruction, and intentional erasure over millennia have left holes in the record. The Abydos chamber helps fill some of these gaps by providing material evidence that corroborates other indirect sources. For example, the combination of mud brick vaults, limestone engineering, and painted hieroglyphic bands illustrates continuity and change in tomb construction techniques over time. It shows that even during periods of political weakness, local rulers had the capacity to commission complex projects and maintain traditions. Another key insight comes from the architectural styles and burial practices observed in the chamber. The layout of entry rooms, the central chamber, and supporting vaults is consistent with Egyptian design principles, but also introduces subtle differences that were not previously recorded. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.